ni wewe banefuaya kafa babalanda mwe umfokulira kwa bantu kasama yuti bose batinda abakuru n'abana bose bashitata n'abana bayo banelira we Mwamba kasama ile faya iwe wile webo weshi Mwamba leka experience alakale webo Mwamba Emmanuel bose bakasama bale faya Mwamba Emmanuel bakasama bakulira tule faya Mwamba wesu Emmanuel chipani ni PF tule faya Mwamba wesu Emmanuel wakuito mwele Emmanuel Mwamba Mbasaka Emmanuel wale faya Emmanuel Mwamba Mbasaka Emmanuel alakale webo Mwamba Emmanuel bose bakasama bale faya Mwamba Emmanuel bakasama bakulira tule faya Mwamba wesu Emmanuel chipani ni PF tule faya Mwamba wesu Emmanuel wakuito mwele Emmanuel Mwamba Mbasaka Emmanuel wale faya Emmanuel Mwamba Mbasaka Emmanuel bakasama bakulira
Good day. Today, we've chosen to discuss the recent visit by the U.S. Secretary to Treasury, Janet Yellen, and the International Monetary Fund Managing Director, Kristalina Georgieva. We think that these visits were very important and that they require some form of analysis. Let's start with the remarks that were made by Janet Yellen, the Secretary, Treasury. We think that the remarks were unfortunate. First of all, there was no need to bring China into the picture. Secondly, to raise an issue that China was being a problem in the creditors committee in relation to this IMF bailout that Zambia has obtained. Those remarks were unfortunate. I think that both Zambia and the US should have spent time to discuss Zambia-US relations, Zambia-IMF-US relations, and not include China. Further, the remarks by President Hakainde Hichilema that most of these loans were motivated by corruption, I think were also very, very unfortunate. Let's start with the debt that Zambia has. We have $14.8 billion. The large stake of that debt is China, about $5.9 billion is China. So China is our largest single creditor. The others, we are aware, Eurobond and other commercial creditors. The loans that Zambia obtained from China, Zambia was a mere beneficiary of those loans. These loans were arranged and organized at African Union level. The 2015 Forum for China-Africa Cooperation meeting that was held in Johannesburg, and I was privileged to attend, President Xi Jinping and Africa, a pledge of $60 billion was given to Africa, that Africa could exploit this both in credit lines and concessional loans. The next one was in 2018, a meeting that was held in Beijing. Again, the Chinese government pledged another $60 billion to Africa. And then China has been running what we call the Belt Road Initiative. This is a flagship program for infrastructure across the world to open trade routes. There has been special attention to Africa because most of the imports for China come from Africa, especially for mineral resources and other primary goods. So China has been building roads, bridges, airports, name all the facilities required, harbors required for trade and for trade facilitation. And Zambia benefited from there because you saw China under project finance fund most of our roads. Look at the Nakonde Mbala road, key road to make a short route to the DRC. Look at the Luingu Mansa road. Look at many of those roads that were done under project finance. They were all trade related. There were some roads that were done in Lusaka, for example, to widen Lusaka, decongest Lusaka, tar Lusaka, just to make easy of business for Lusaka as the capital city of this country, which is a hub for local and international visitors, tourists, businessmen, trade experts, and all. Look at the international airport, Kenneth Kaunda International Airport, Simon Mwansaka Pwepwe International Airport. Look at the expansion that was done to Hari Mwangankumla International Airport in Livingstone. So there has been this initiative. Of course, Zambia as a sovereign state can get bilateral loans with China, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the bulk of the loans were not motivated or initiated by Zambia, as President Hakainde Hichilema is trying to put it. These were initiatives of Africa. That is why you find a similar stadium in Senegal. You find a similar stadium in Lusaka, Ndola. You find a similar stadium in Tanzania. That's why you find a similar, almost identical airport anywhere in Africa. These were trade facilitated projects that China has been pushing under the BRI project, road, the Belt and Road Initiative. Let's go to another matter where the US Secretary of Treasury condemned China, that China was slowing down the process for the IMF bailout. Remember, Zambia has been granted a $1.3 billion bailout by the IMF, but it is conditioned on a lot of things. We have to remove subsidies, we have to trim down on projects and public expenditure and public investment, we have to hike things like electricity so that there is a cost-reflective tariffs for our citizens. It's conditioned on a lot of premises. It's for this reason that we've been demanding for this staff-level agreement that was done between Zambia and the IMF. We wanted to know the details. Another big condition is that Zambia must renegotiate its loans because it's spending a lot of money on debt service. And you are aware that since 2020, Zambia hasn't been servicing its debt because among 48 countries that applied under the G20 debt suspension initiative, we suspended paying our debt. From 2020, Zambia hasn't been paying its debt, and we were paying a lot of money in relation to our GDP and to our national budget in debt service. So there's a condition that we must negotiate our debt. This process was started by Zambia. You remember that the Minister of Finance and Yellenand, we had contracted Lazard to restructure our debt, see which creditors could forgive some of our debts, which could spread some of our repayment schedules. This process had started, but the IMF took over that process. They've taken that process over in Chad, in Senegal, in Niger, and here in Zambia. So there's a creditors committee that has come together. There were some delays because China was not part of it. China has a relationship with African Union and with Zambia, and they didn't think that they should be part of this creditors committee. But with the persuasion, with the intervention, and with the love that China has for our country, they decided to participate in this creditors committee. Now the US says China is delaying. What are the issues under the creditors committee? From what we have gathered is that the loans, most of the loans that we have with China, actually commercial loans, because we got these loans under project finance. Remember, they built the Tazara project. The Tazara project was the largest single project in the world at a time when it was being built. And China wasn't even as rich or as wealthy as they are. But they sacrificed. They had sent up to 60,000 workers. They even had brought special drilling machines from Sweden. They had to make special purpose vehicle to transport these workers from China to come and make Tazara. There was a huge sacrifice. The project cost over $465 million in 1970. I don't know how much that is. So our relations with China are not new, are not premised on the PF or on President Edgar Lungu. They stretch far, far, far. They helped the liberation movement in Africa They helped South Africa, Namibia, Angola, and they helped wage the struggle. Remember where we have government complex. That was a building donated to us by China. Mungushi International Conference. Name them. China has been a no-weather friend to Zambia, and it doesn't deserve to be treated in the manner that President Hakainde Hichilema and the US were treating us. President Hakainde Hichilema and the US must discuss Zambia-US relations without scandalizing third parties like China. We think that we need to take great exception to that. Zambia should not be made to choose who its friends are. Zambia must choose its own friends and its own adversaries. Zambia should not be pushed to choose who it should associate with. We are a sovereign, independent nation, and we should not be treated as a third-class country or third-class citizens of the world. No. And Zambia has those good relations with China. So it was regrettable to hear those remarks. The delays at the IMF, therefore, at the creditors committee, are that Zambia has announced that it wants a debt write-off of $8 billion from the 14.8, and they want China to write off that debt. China is saying if there's any write-off, it should be done by all other creditors. They are saying no, China should graduate its debt from commercial loan to sovereign loan. And so that it's then easier for the country to write off the debt. Remember, the debts are under Exim Bank and other development banks. We think that this is a matter between Zambia and China. That is why from day one we've urged President Hakainde Hichilema to take time and visit China, re-energize, bring fire to these visits so that our debt can be written off, our debt can be restructured, our debt repayment can be spread, that we have enough headroom for us to spend on social and economic sectors, for us to spend on projects, for us to begin job creation and other matters. So the remarks by both US and President Hakainde Hichilema were very unfortunate. For the IMF, we have a standing issue. We've raised a petition against the IMF. We want the IMF to apologize for the implementation of the structural adjustment program. Their own literature say these programs failed, and these programs left a litany of destroyed economies, destroyed livelihoods, and impoverished Africa. There's no good argument about those structural adjustment, and we are an example. You can just go to the Copperbelt. You can just go to our industrial area in Livingstone. You can go to an industrial area in Ndola, Kitwe, Lusaka. You will see the damage in the wake that those programs left. So we've demanded for an official apology from the IMF for that damage that was done to Africa. We've also demanded that the new programs that we're implementing, because we've seen fundamentally the programs are the same. They are hurting the poor, they are hurting the vulnerable. By removing subsidies even from agriculture, it's our smallholder farmers in the rural areas that you are hurting. You are hurting our workers when you bring in these hostility and austere measures that, for example, have to remove subsidies from the fuel, and our people and our workers are suffering, and the cost of living has gone so high. They want us to pay cost-reflective tariffs so that their companies can come and establish new energy companies in Zambia that ZESCO then can afford to buy that power from them at the expense of citizens. We think that it should be a gradual process, the graduation. Zambia has done a lot of public investment in our power generation. We should have it for free, literally. Kariba was built in the 50s. We've recouped our investment again and again. Kafue Gorge and others. Our Zambian citizens cannot be compared to other countries that depend on imports or that depend on expensive source of energy. For Zambia, we have cheap energy from hydro generation, and we should have fair prices. So we have petitioned the IMF, and we hope that they will respond to those programs. And shame to our leaders that sell this country. Shame to our leaders that act as agents against their own people by speedily implementing these programs without even subjecting them to the National Assembly, a people's parliament. They just sneak these programs in. They don't even give us the details. We've been begging and knocking on doors from Ministry of Finance, from IMF, for them to give us these agreements that were signed so that Zambians can know the particular details. Yet they won't give us. Yet they claim that these programs are here to alleviate poverty. These programs are here to create poverty, to create wealth and employment, and that they want to help with health and education. If it is that, give us the details, give us a MOU. Colleagues, with those few remarks, we wish to thank you very much for being with us. Next time we are discussing the presidential trips. The president has taken over 31 international trips in a period of 16 months. This is, we think, is totally excessive. He's taking 2 international trips per year. And we know how much one presidential trip costs. Join in for us to disclose those details.
Kasa mayuti bose batinda be abakuru